What am I getting?
Let's win.
Let's win.
Let's win at this life thing.
Let's win. Okay, so full disclosure.
Yeah.
I didn't do much research this time around.
Yeah.
And I came with no questions prepared.
That's cool.
Because I wanted it to be more of a natural conversation compared to it being too much of an interview.
Yeah.
So, feel free to... Oh! Mother! We're good.
Are you really?
Yeah, that was just my fingernail. It kind of hit in the end. Got strong bones.
Yeah.
Strong bones.
Oh, gosh.
Also, speaking of bones, I'm really listening to the Robert Pickton True Crime podcast.
Yeah, I can't listen to stuff.
Did you find it was after having your kids?
Have I been more sensitive? Maybe. Although I feel like in general, it's been the first season of True Detective was probably the most like scary thing I've ever watched. Like
It's
ever.
True Detective.
It's an HBO show. I want to say it's HBO. They've only had 2 seasons, and they're like basically kind of mini series.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's very good, but it's like terrifying.
Yeah.
Anyways, bones.
Bones.
But you're all right.
I'm good. Thank you.
Hi. What would you like from the comments? I'd love to know, maybe as like a thing before we begin. What's your deepest intention for your podcast in general? And then what is, I know that the draw is there. I love our conversations anyway, so even if you're like, I just wanted to talk to you about anything, and that's great.
Yeah.
But I love like the bigger vision of like, what's the intention you're holding for Kilter and Mint podcast specifically, so we can live into it.
Yeah. I feel that the podcast has been going through a bit of an evolution. So you were one of the first guests to ever come on it almost 2 years ago. And back then it was very much about like lifestyle, fitness, what's happening in Vancouver influencers. And then what I found was that wasn't the conversations that I was really into. So I'm still trying to find the words to probably describe where it's going. But for me, I've really felt called to bring forth different voices and give people a platform to share whatever their message is. And what I've found and heard is that one of my strengths is being relatable. So perhaps I bring forth a story or some idea or thoughts that maybe wouldn't be in someone's normal everyday view. So when it comes to a new view on parenting, and like a new fitness trend, or just being able to question more things, then that's the direction I want to take it. And if it gets people asking why, or looking at themselves, and not from a lens of being bad or anything, but just kind of being like, hey, how do I play into this? Then that's like a success, a tick, and a win. And then for our conversation, what I love talking to you, people really resonated with mindful gift giving that we did for Christmas. And I feel like you're making ripples in the world of motherhood and bringing about conversation of conscious parenting that isn't from like Oprah, because she's had so many different people on her podcast talking about it, and some of it was just a little bit too far out for me to grasp. So just hearing your experiences, the work you're in, and bringing it forth to Vancouver and the world.
Yeah, so sweet. Beautiful. Thank you for holding that intention and me so gently. I love that. What I hear from the intention that you shared more generally around Kilter and Mint is that the 2 words that were like have really high frequency that are coming through are creativity and curiosity. So you are using your creative spirit and your ability to hold joyful space in a curious way to allow and invite other people into that curiosity with the same nature of playfulness that you bring to your work, which is beautiful.
Yeah, that's it. And like, you know, when you listen to something and you're like, I should listen to this because it's a very important topic and I need to educate myself, but then you're also like, wah, wah. Yeah, bring that playfulness to it.
Yeah.
Great.
Thanks. Yeah, I get that from you. And I can sense that you're still like, still something is still there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And something is hanging on your.
What is it?
No, like not a real thing. Not a real thing.
Wait, are you talking about like energetic?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not a real thing. Well, it's a real thing. It's a real thing. But do you know? Have you noticed what's going on with your shoulders?
This one time I was training for a bikini competition, like bodybuilding, and they told me I would never win because one of my shoulders is higher than the other. That's
That is so random.
Because you can see my, like, we aren't even sitting straight, you see me sit kind of crooked, but you can already tell. I don't know. Tell me more.
Well, it's just, it's what's interesting to witness is that, so the right shoulder, which is like the masculine drive side. Are you right-handed or left-handed?
Right-handed.
Right-handed. So drive, fire, forward pushing, momentum. A lot of this is happening with your right shoulder, which is not surprising. You're taking action, and action is usually taken from the masculine side, which makes sense, especially when life is hard. We feel like we gotta like, so I see that. But the left shoulder, going to the feminine, is, I don't know necessarily that it's so much that it's one is higher and one is lower. It's more that I noticed there is actually surprisingly more weight on your right shoulder. So the shoulder that's up is holding more dense energy. So it's actually like heavier. It's not like what's weighing you down. That's not what I see. I see more like it's actually, maybe it's like it's hard. Maybe it's a lot of doing some things. Responsibility, over responsibility.
Yeah. And feeling like I need to be strong.
Yeah. And you are.
Oh yeah. What's interesting is what that brought up for me when you said that is with like International Women's Day or like different friends doing different businesses, and what people keep on telling me is like I look to you for strength. And it's even in my times where I need support, people still see me as strong. It's like that thing, it's like check on all your friends, check on the ones who are quote unquote strong. So I feel like I'm trying to
which is for everyone. There's a little bit of over responsibility.
I feel that.
And what is there anything more around it? I feel like maybe if there's anything, it's just to know people will do what they will do, and it has nothing to do with you. And then they will say what they will say, and it has nothing to do with you. If you're consciously moving with integrity in all of your thoughts, deeds, and actions, that's all the responsibility you need.
It's so my mom got me this necklace for Christmas, and it's Veritas Equitas, which is truth and justice. So no matter what else is going on and stirring on around me, knowing that I know it's true in my body, is to always come back home into myself.
I see that.
One more thing about your intuitive readings. So we were at the first Taraneh event where you spoke and I led a philosophy class. And after the class, Taraneh comes up to me and she gives me a big hug. And you hold my shoulder and you say, now, you can take this or leave this, or something along those lines. Like, I'm going to say something. And you're like, your Manipura chakra is off and you need to wear more yellow. I did a Reiki session with Julia, who we used to work with, and she's like, hey, your Manipura is way off. So two different people and a few months apart, the same message. And before I'd be like, okay, yeah, whatever. I was like, no, there's something. They're onto something.
Interesting. It's funny, like, when it was at the Grace Club event where you're like, hey, someone else told me, you mentioned that to me. And I thought, like, and it's fun, it was funny for me because I walked away and I thought like, oh, it's so interesting because I've really been in this kind of discovery of words and how I describe myself and my work and what I'm interested in and my skills and my talents and all of that, which you understand as an entrepreneur. It's like, it's a whole other thing than when you apply for a job, you have to prove yourself once. And then you just kind of like, okay, well, everyone knows I got this job, so like I don't have to keep saying like, these are all the things I bring in with me. Everyone understands. There's like an understanding there. And what I'm finding in like the entrepreneurial route is that there's no way for me to even forget like I could tell you like, yeah, I studied body-centered psychotherapy and dance therapy. So there's certain things that I see physically in a body. I haven't studied with anybody, but I've been able to see energy and auras all my life. And I used to use it in my counseling sessions because I could tell like quite specifically. And then I'm like, yeah, and then do I start telling people like, I don't know that I don't feel very good about attaching labels to myself. And yet I'm in this like interesting world. I'm like, oh, like would it have helped you to hear me better if you had known, oh, Taraneh can read energy and she, she has psychic abilities and whatever else. Or like I was wondering as I walked away from that conversation, I'm like, oh, is my kind of stubbornness about not being like, look at all the things I can do, look at all the knowledge that I have. I feel like that's what it would feel like if I overshared. But I'm like, first of all, that's a story that I'm holding, that like that's how it would come across. And secondly, am I actually holding people back from receiving me fully when I don't share my abilities? So anyways, I kind of like, I've been sitting with that actually since that conversation, and I still don't know the answer. Because I'm like, oh, I don't know. I don't know if it's helpful. It could be off-putting for some people who are like, you are way too cuckoo bananas for me. Just get out the door. Yeah. And maybe that's part of the reason of like the holding back. And I feel like, I mean, I probably wouldn't share it like the way that I just did with you with anybody, but maybe there are ways that I could find the right words to share to let people know that like, I'm not just saying random shit. Yeah. Like there is things that I see that could be beneficial to someone. I always share it.
What I found from my experience was I had you sharing as a friend, and I had Julia share in like a practicum setting, or where like I went to her for that treatment. Yeah. So to hear from two totally different resources actually made it, or two different sources made it land. Being like, okay, so I didn't know any of that. I just know you as like quote unquote yoga teacher, right? Because that's where we really bonded and grew our connection. So I know you have a deep understanding of the chakras, right? But I didn't feel like there's anything more. And I also, if I'd known that you were like an intuitive healer or something along those lines, or labeled it, or I'd been like, oh, that's cool. Or is she trying to get like what's the exchange? What is she getting and telling me? Yeah. Or what is the catch with it? Right. And I say that because this woman who I do private yoga sessions with, and she's like, actually, I went to a party this weekend. I'm like, okay, tell me more, Jenny. And she said, yeah, I met this woman, and she's like, I really want to read you. Like, I'm a clairvoyant or whatever. I just like to sit down. And they were talking, and so this woman brought it up in a natural conversation, and she's the one who initiated it. And Jenny's like, oh my gosh, like this is wonderful. And she's like, I feel like I need to pay you or something. And the woman's like, well, a donation would be greatly appreciated. And she's like, oh, that's awkward. Not that you would ever do that, or that Julia ever does anything like that, but I wonder if that's what people have in the back of their mind.
Yeah, totally. That's helpful to hear. Yeah, I don't know where all of it comes in. I actually kind of feel like I'd rather people not really know. because I do, when something comes to me, it's coming through me. And if I want to gift it to someone where I feel like they're ready to receive it, I will. And if I'm like, yeah, this is not the right time or place or whatever, I have no agenda around it. It's like, oh, this would be helpful for this person. So I get it.
Cool.
And yeah, if I ever like had like a counseling session and I used it, then yes, people are paying me for that. But like that's not the intention. One of the most powerful lessons for me over the last couple of years is that any action that has a clear intention is bound to succeed.
Say that one more time.
Any action that has clear intention is bound to succeed.
Whether positive or negative?
It will come to fruition as it must. So if my intention is clear, it's not, so let's say like, this feels like maybe, I mean, it could be really in any context, but let's say in the context of like a podcast, my intention here is to share information and knowledge that I feel I've gained and embodied over the last several years in a way that could be received differently by people who've heard of conscious parenting, but it hasn't landed for them. It's not accessible in some way. It's a different voice. Like you said, like Oprah has had some really, really wonderful people. And I went to see Dr. Shafali when she was in Vancouver. She spoke.
Yeah.
And I could tell there was like, I was really impressed. I'm like, wow, such a great group of people here, like huge numbers. And at the end of it, I was like, and a lot of them like came and like maybe that's all they needed, but you could tell like it just like went over their head. She was entertaining and she was funny, and that was wonderful. And either people were not ready to receive it, or it was just so like convoluted and complex that it was like, did I hear that right? Do I get that right? Like people who, you know, we do like partner shares or whatever, and I felt like I was doing like mini coaching in every partner share. I was like, she means this, and I'm like, oh. And that's when I thought like, maybe there is space here in Vancouver for this kind of work, because there's enough people who are intrigued. And yet don't know like where else to take it other than like the watching some video or taking some course or something,
reading some book,
or whatever.
So what is let's get right to it. What is conscious parenting?
Yeah, are you recording?
Oh, we've been recording this whole time.
Oh, really? Oh,
are you serious?
Yeah. Oh,
this conversation. No, I freaking. This is perfect.
Oh my gosh, that is
no. We were
hilarious.
recording for 18 minutes and 9 seconds.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well,
this is the good shit.
Great.
This is. I find it's when people don't know that they're being recorded, either the beginning or the end, or once you get past that clunkiness and get into the conversation, that's when it's the good shit.
Yeah.
Well, this is good right from the get-go, because you didn't
oh
know
my
we were
gosh,
recording.
that is too funny. That is too funny.
Speaking of which, I'm gonna grab some more tea.
Yes.
Okay, keep going. I'm listening.
Did you see it? Okay. So your question is, what is conscious parenting?
Yeah. Or like if you want to share about yourself or whatever. Take it as you like.
Okay, let's begin. I don't know. Oh, thank you.
Please.
Sweetheart.
My pleasure. All right, take it away.
I feel that when people hear the term conscious parenting, they wonder if it's like, oh, is this some kind of way of approaching parenting where I'm like really aware of everything my child is doing at all times? Some people think it's like around being like aware of your child, and to a degree it is. There's a certain amount of attunement and like awareness of your child that you're doing, but truly conscious parenting is not about your child. It's about you as the parent. So the work to break it down, is to really move forward in your life consciously. So what does that mean? So breaking that part down. Because I think it's like a word people use, but they don't really get it.
Yeah, it's a hot word right now.
It's a hot word.
It's a hot word. Yeah.
Smoking. So here's the best way that I can describe it in simple terms. Consciousness is the state of being in which we are aware that we are not our ego. Okay. Mm-hmm. So what's the ego? The ego is all of the mind stuff, all like the constant chatter in the brain, which most of us identify with as ourselves. When we think, I think this, I think that, so forth. It's any thought form, including like roles that we play. So like if I say I'm Taraneh, I'm a registered counselor, I write, I'm a yoga teacher, I'm a mother, blah, blah, blah. These are all roles that are play. They're part of my identity, but they're really what they are, they're part of my ego. Mm. My truth is my awareness behind all of these thought forms, behind all of these roles, behind all of these ways that I play out in the world. So that awareness is part of, like when we say conscious parenting, yes, awareness of your child, but really it's not about your child, it's about awareness of yourself with a capital S. Mm. So the work of conscious parenting is really about operating in your day-to-day life in relationship to your child from that higher self place. And what that requires is to first begin to understand the difference and like split the difference between who am I truly, really, and who do most of us operate in this like ego place.
It's almost, Glennon Doyle described it as your representative.
Mm-hmm.
So you send in your representative when you go to like a group setting or when you want to put on that mask, versus you are behind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a little bit. It's funny, when we were doing yoga teacher training together, I don't know if you remember, but quite often we would sit in these meditations, and at the end of which there would be these questions that would be dropped in. And the first one, I think it was the first one, it was, who am I?
Yeah.
And I remember in one of those sessions, the answer that came to me personally was, I'm the seer behind the veil. I was like, what is that? I was like, okay, let that be. Now I feel like I can relate to that when I think about defining and supporting people in understanding what it means to move consciously through life. It's being the witness behind the veil of the illusion that is this form, this body, this life, this role, this function, this room, this podcast, this all of this like outward facing stuff. So when I know the truth of who I am, I operate quite differently in my day-to-day life, whether it's with my child or children, whether it's with the co-parent, right? Mm-hmm. So, or anybody else really. It's really in any relationship. What's really supportive for like the dialogue of consciousness and raising consciousness in this stream of parenting is that we have a tremendous opportunity to raise our children connected and tethered to that truth that they already know from when they're young. Because we all know it. Mm-hmm. I feel that one of the most profound things that our children teach us, and a lot of people say our kids are our best teachers, and yes, they are. They absolutely are in small and huge ways. But one of the lessons that gets missed quite a lot, and I said this at the Grace Club event actually, so you might remember this, but I feel like one of the greatest lessons that gets missed is when our children are toddlers and they start to speak, and they refer to themselves in the third person. So if it were me, if it were like, let's say when I was a child, I would say like, Taraneh do this, like Taraneh wants, like, you know, and you'll start to notice that with your own child once she gets to that stage. And the reason for it is because as children, we already know that we are not our form, we are not our name, we are not this little like body moving forward, but the way that we get socialized, we begin to collapse our truth with like this person that's living in this lifetime, in this life form right now. And so part of the beautiful opportunity for parents in raising their own state of consciousness is that the ripple effect is massive. They provide an opportunity for their children to live into a higher version of themselves from the beginning. And maybe not even ever forget that that is their truth. That would be freaking awesome. The reality is that unless we're all walking around as like, I don't know, like super 100% awakened individuals, we're gonna make mistakes, and we're gonna have bad days, and we're gonna course correct, and we're gonna forgive ourselves, and we're gonna apologize to our children and do better. And that's part of it. None of this is about perfect parenting. It's about parenting fully aware.
So you're a mom to 2 young kids. At what point did you go from practicing conscious parenting, which it's a lifelong thing, it's not in every single moment like, I'm a conscious parent. You don't get a badge for it. But at what point did you shift from being like, hey, this is how I want to, you know, raise my kids, this is how I want to be as a parent, to coming to a place where you want to be sharing this larger than within your home?
That's a beautiful question. I don't know that I know any other way to be. I feel like my biggest work in this lifetime is to hold space for people who are moving through their own journey of conscious awakening. That's my work. Whether I call it 10 different million things, that's still my work. And so when was the tipping point of shifting? I think over the last maybe year or so, where I've realized that this is not some kind of like knowledge that I have that I can say like, hey, listen, I went to so and such school, and let me give you all of my credentials, and let me give you the guidebook to walk away with to be a really great parent. Because that is feeding the ego. I don't want to feed anybody's ego. This work is not at all about that. I want to support and hold hands with other people who are like, I am ready to let go of living in my ego, because I know it's best for myself, it's best for the people around me, it's best for my community, and ultimately it's best for the world. Because when we have access to that place within us that is not hindered by conditioning, when we're our true self, people say like, oh, you're so-and-so's in flow, so-and-so is shining in their full light, so-and-so is like fully themselves. These are all different ways of saying that people are aligned to that which they truly are. And so whatever work it is that we do to get to that place is really profound. I know that part of me stepping into this work and sharing it in a bigger way outside of my home is also this like huge amount of like, I am gonna hold myself accountable 110%. This is not just something that I'm gonna say and then I'm gonna go inside and yell at my kids and not even notice that I'm, you know, derailed.
Yeah.
Right? So once I felt the call to live consciously in all of my relationships, I can't turn that back off. It's like I've bust a certain constraint that was around me, around like being good and looking good and like performing and fitting in and people liking me, and like it's broken now. That frame that was holding me, it's broken now. And so if I am to, instead of being like, oh my God, let me build the frame back up with these new words and new terminologies so that people start to like understand me again. I'm like, no, it's fucking bust open. Here I am. Now I'm going to step fully into it. And so that's part of it. And I am hopeful that through the conversations that I have, whether it's in my work, whether I'm teaching yoga or whether I'm guiding a session or whether I'm speaking, that people see the opportunity to connect to the simplicity of being truly themselves, so that it doesn't become this thing that, oh, only these kinds of people do that.
Right.
Or like, oh, her kids must be really well behaved if she says she's a conscious parent. They must never have tantrums and she must never lose her temper. And like, that's, none of that is really true. And it is a shift in perspective. I have to be slowed down and self-aware enough to make different choices. Like yesterday, it's the first day of spring break. And my morning started off with my two kids getting onto each other's nerves, basically. They're just at a different enough of an age gap where that's starting to happen. There was like a kerfuffles, like plural, continuously. And I could feel myself being like, oh my goodness, like this is not the kind of morning I want. So first, I realized that, oh, I think I'm in control here. I think that I've decided this is the kind of morning we're gonna have, and by all means, like this is it. I'm gonna force it. I'm gonna make it happen, which is all ego, and it's controlling. Doesn't really help anybody. And then I can just notice, like, oh, I'm feeling that, like, feelings of agitation and frustration are arising within me, and I could take it out on my kids and I could yell at them, or I can notice that the environment here right now, no matter how many kind words I use, like gentle hands, please don't hit your sister, please be kind to your brother, don't push each other, you know, like I could say that for like the next 3 hours and still not be having a good time in it. So I can do the best parenting I can in that moment, and then I have to realize that I have a choice. I can be the kind of mom who says, screw this spring break business, like this sucks, I'm like stuck, quote unquote, stuck at home with these kids, this is horrible. Or I could say, okay, right now this is not working. What are the elements that we could shift that could support all of us, that could be best for all of us? So what I did is I said, okay, we're going out, we're gonna leave. I did my best to be gentle and loving in the moments that I could get the shoes on and the snack pack and the water bottle and the kids at the door. And because I went through those motions with the joy of, I get to parent my kids today. I don't have to. I don't have to be a good mom today. I get to be one. I get to be with my kids. Wow. Yay. Great. there are millions of people who are separated from their children, not just for a day's worth of work, but for weeks, months, years. Whether that's because of work situations, whether it's because of family dynamic situations, whether it's because of immigration, like who knows, whatever the thing is, or even to the extreme point of death. There's separation. I keep thinking like what people would give to have the opportunity on a beautiful sunny day to spend time with their children and have the opportunity to learn and live into loving them the best that they can and learning together. And that's the opportunity I had yesterday. So once I shifted my frame from I have to do this to I get to do this, what a privilege. All the gratitude comes rushing in to save the day. And so then my emotions are with that intention of love, with that intention of connection and togetherness and mutual growth. And so we left, we had the best day. So it's those kinds of like moments. But if I wasn't self-aware enough to notice the agitation that was rising in my body, and if I was not in a place where I could see what was arising and notice that, that's just the ego showing up. If I was just operating from that ego place, probably what would come out is some kind of reaction. I would get triggered by their unwillingness to cooperate, and I'd be like, yelling and
locking yourself in a balcony
and being like, I didn't sign up for this,
You talked about having this self-awareness. And for us being in the practice of yoga and the yamas and niyamas of svadhyaya, how can we take something like svadhyaya and make it more tangible and actionable? So what are steps people can take to bring in that self-awareness, whether they're a parent or not?
Yes, I'm so glad that you said that, whether they are a parent or not. First of all, even if we're not a parent, we are someone's child. We are. We all have some kind of relationship with our parents. But it is truly in any relationship. And we don't exist truly outside of relationships. We're relational creatures, right? So yes, this goes way beyond parenting, which is why it's like so freaking awesome to be in this work. But what are some practical things that they can do? I mean, I feel like a broken record, and everybody says this in a million different ways, but meditation is so key. It's so key. Because what meditation gives us tools for is to create that space where the ego isn't driving. So like all those thoughts that come up when we're meditating, that's all, first of all, it's like mental garbage mostly. And repetitive and unhelpful in many ways. And learning about the patterns of the things that come up in the mind is one thing that can be helpful. But truly, if nothing else, meditation provides us the practice of noticing when something comes up and not attaching to it. So when we say like, notice when a thought arises and let it go, come back to your breath or to your mantra or whatever is like the form of meditation someone is doing, when that is practiced enough in our day-to-day life, when something comes up like yesterday, when my kids are like literally like pulling hair, shouting, like food being thrown, like it's like the real thing, right? It's happening. I have the opportunity in that moment to practice, but because I've sat for meditation so many times, I notice the thought arising, I notice the vibration, I notice the feeling,
the heat,
yeah,
whatever it might be,
whatever that thing is. And for different people, it'll be different things, and also different triggers will elicit various responses from people. But because I've sat enough in practice to know the difference between moving in my next breath from reaction or from response, I know how to choose response. I've trained myself to choose response. It doesn't mean that from time to time I don't go, like, that's enough, you know?
Or lose your shit.
Right.
Like everyone does at some point.
Right, it happens. And far less frequently than ever before. And there's no need for it when I notice early enough that which is arising, and I can say, oh, that's the voice of the ego, as, okay, this is not helpful for me right now. What's going to be helpful for me right now? And I can talk myself through it. And it's seconds. It's not like this 5-minute self-talk while the kids are basically killing each other. You know?
Excuse me. Yeah.
It's this opportunity.
I just see you going off to a corner,
yeah,
in your sweet spot, and lighting a candle.
Yes.
Practicing Nadi Shavana.
Yeah.
No,
I think one of the things that a lot of people who are new to meditation say is, it's really hard. I hear that. I don't know if I'm doing it right is another thing that I hear. And then when am I going to get results? All of those things. And there's so much research out there for meditation. And what's really beautiful around the work of meditation is that there is now research that shows us that meditation is really supportive for our physical health, reduces anxiety, reduces blood pressure, it supports us in our sleep, all of that. There's research that shows us that meditation is helpful for our mental health. It helps us self-regulate, it lowers anxiety, it provides spaciousness for gratitude to come in for those days that we feel extra low, or even people who are in a state of depression can benefit from being in loving kindness with themselves, which is that space of meditation. And then there's this other next step, which is an area that I'm really interested in speaking about and writing about, which is our spiritual health.
Talk to me about that. What's spiritual health?
So I feel like a lot of people are like, ooh, spiritual. I don't know, cringe. I'm not sure. Ooh, I don't know if I'm spiritual, or oh, spiritual. I'm super spiritual. I'll get this, right? There's a whole array of understanding. The best thing I can say, as far as definitions go, is the teaching from Eckhart Tolle, which is spirituality has nothing to do with one's beliefs and everything to do with our state of consciousness.
One more time.
I don't know if that's the exact quote, but this is the gist of it.
Yeah.
Spirituality has nothing to do with one's beliefs and everything to do with our state of consciousness. So going back to when we started to speak around consciousness at the beginning of our dialogue, consciousness is our awareness that we are not just this form, this body. We are the awareness behind those things, right? We are something that it's hard to describe because it comes from timeless, formless dimension, and once people get that, they're like, I don't know, I don't get this whole consciousness stuff, I don't get this spiritual stuff. And yeah, perhaps it is even hard to describe. I can tell you that in my personal experience, once I began to embody and move from that place of connection and awareness of my state of consciousness, my life has completely changed. And that's one of the things that meditation really allows for. So on a first level, on a very basic level, when we sit in meditations and thoughts, emotions, like anything basically arises, we teach ourselves to release them and come back to our breath, right? Or come back to the present moment, which is so helpful in and of itself. Once we start to understand that all of those things that come up in the mind are not our truth, those are all projections, reflections, illusions that are brought up because of the existence of our ego, whether it's our personal ego or a collective ego. And we lean more and more into that like perfectly held space of awareness that this is not who we truly are. Our state of consciousness rises, and it truly is an energetic uplifting, which can be extremely supportive.
I've never thought about like your spiritual health before, and I look at all these different aspects of my life, and there's been so much change and so much that's been going on, from postpartum depression to my marriage ending to changing careers, motherhood, and I've only really looked at it from like physical and mental. I'm like, okay, I'm going to therapy, I'm taking antidepressants, I'm doing what I need to do to take care of that, I'm taking care of my body, trying to eat healthier. But there always felt like there was this piece that was missing, and I found that when I did practice meditation or journaled, I felt like I was coming back home, and I don't know if it was necessarily like in my mind, but I felt like I was coming back to almost like my soul. Like I was doing things that were fueling and filling up my soul. But I don't know what would the difference between like spirituality, spirit, and soul. How would you describe that?
I would describe. Okay, so you may have already heard this analogy, which is around soul and spirit, and the analogy is that of the ocean. So the soul is like a drop of water that's in the ocean, that is residing within you in this lifetime, in this form, in this time and space. And it's being expressed outwardly as Ashley, right? Spirit is the ocean itself. So you're not separate as a drop of water in the ocean. You're not separate from the whole ocean. You're part of it. But also the ocean is within you, because everything that the ocean is made up of is also residing within that one drop. So if the soul is the individual drop from the ocean, and spirit is the whole ocean itself, it's all the energetic, unmanifested vibration that's in the universe. That's spirit. And it has different qualities, just like anything else. Just like all other things. So when we talk about spiritual health, we're talking about the well-being of our soul in congruence with the natural order of the world, in alignment with all of spirit.
Break it down more.
So we suffer when we feel separate, when we feel lost, when we feel like we don't get it, when we feel like, is this all there is? It really, like, because that sucks sometimes, right? And sometimes it's quite profound, depending on what life situation you're in. But there's this opportunity that we have that when we're in alignment, when we're in flow, when we're connected, when we understand the relationship that we have to all other beings, and not just humans, but all other beings, when we feel that connection and that oneness, there's a sense of wholeness. There's that coming home. There is that like feeling of being fully supported that is only really accessible to us if we understand the relationship of ourselves within this bigger context. Now, different people believe different things about what that bigger context is, and truly, actually, it doesn't matter. So sometimes spirituality is expressed in like a specific form, like let's say a religious form.
Right.
Religion on its own is not about doctrine. It's not about rule following. It's a set of guidelines to support people in having a spiritual practice at its best. That's what religion can hold space for, no matter what religion there is. That's why there's so many teachings that are the same across many religions, right?
Yeah.
So it's not so much, when we want to be in spiritual health, it's not so much about, oh well, I better start some religion, you know, or I better go back to the church or the mosque or whatever. And it's not even about like, oh, spiritual health, okay, I better like read tarot cards and burn essential oils and like, you know, I kind of say it like half-hearted, like jokingly kind of, but like, you know, charging your crystals under the moon. Yes, those are practices that can help us, support us in feeling more connected to that which is the whole ocean. Yes, but that itself is not spirituality. Just doing those things doesn't raise our level of
consciousness,
right?
Yeah.
Oh, kids are gonna jump in the trampoline.
Hi! Hi! Yeah, of course.
Maybe let's close that window.
Hi.
Hi.
Are you cool if we close the window? We got just a little bit more to record, okay? But you have fun on the trampoline, okay? Okay, deal. Oh, the best. Yes. Nope. Switching gears just for a sec.
Yeah.
Something, so I did my level 2 trauma training for yoga teachers this past weekend. And something we talked a lot about was spiritual bypassing. So how would you describe, or how would you tie in like spiritual bypassing? Like what you were talking about, like charging new crystals, or, you know, I don't even know.
Can you explain to me what your understanding is of spiritual bypassing?
You're faced with some type of situation in your life, something positive or difficult. And instead of doing the work and looking at like, what role do I have to play in this, or looking at like, what is it that's happening, you'll be like, well, you know, it's just the divine speaking that this is what it needs, this is what's going to happen, or something that I've been hearing a lot, not that I've been hearing a lot lately, but when it comes to how like modern yoga is tailored towards white women, let's get real. And instead of looking at like, hey, what role do I have to play in this, and how have I benefited from it? I've heard different people say like, oh, well, we're all one. It's like, well, that's not really doing the work. It's using more of like some type of spiritualness to get past doing the hard work. What's my take on it?
Yeah. So a couple of things come up. The first part of which I can only really from my personal experience. In my personal experience, connecting to my spiritual life was the easiest thing I've ever done. I don't find that it's realizing where my ego is showing up and is like roaring like a lion, and realizing that, that's not who I am, and I can choose differently because I have the awareness to bear witness to the roar of the ego enough to say, I can choose differently. Actions come easily from that place, because it's when I'm trying to take action and make change in my life while still in my ego mind, it is hard work. It's doing the hard work of the difficulties that have rose up in my life personally or collectively. But when I approach a difficulty from that state of awareness, I can take full responsibility without putting some crazy amount of story on top of it and driving like a maniac towards the solution. Mm-hmm. So for me personally, it was way more difficult to operate my life and solve problems personally or interpersonally, or even find my way through the craziness of the world from that place of ego. Now, I don't say that to say like, oh, once I'm in this state of awareness that truly our truth is all of consciousness, that all the shitty things that happen in day-to-day life don't matter, or that war doesn't matter, or that we can eradicate famine but it's still there, or that, I'm not saying that I can just say, but I send love and light when I meditate. Like, yes, that is not enough. And my state of full embodied presence allows me to take action from this, like, it's almost like then my role, my body, my ego, even my name become a conduit for positive, supportive action forward for all beings. But only when I'm not so attached to the way that I show up, and So I'm aware of how I show up. I do the work, I question, I get curious, all of that. I wonder about where in my past did I learn this and how can I unlearn it, right? There's that work, but it doesn't have a heaviness to it. So I don't feel like I need to bypass anything. I don't need to be like, I don't want to do this work, because it's alleviating, allowing myself the gift of time and space to use this gift that is the brain that has been wrongly misused for many years, to actually use it in a way that supports me in unhinging myself from my ego and collapsing my ego just a little bit more, create space for my truth to come a little bit more forward, a little bit more clear. And so any interaction that I have from that space is going to be elevated, is going to be supportive, and it's not going to be scary. Now, if I say I'm spiritual, but I don't do the work of raising my state of consciousness, I can see how that's not helpful, and how that could be basically just putting like a fake band-aid of like spiritual solution on top of a pandemic, right? Like, some like crazy problem and that all comes from fear, that all comes from not enoughness, that all comes from I don't know how to deal with it, or I'm not the one, or
I don't want to be wrong.
Yeah. So people who say, but we're all one or something, unless they've done the work of actually understanding what they mean, they could realize potentially in that doing that that what they're actually saying is like, I don't believe that we're all one. I just believe that I don't know how to do this and deal with this in the best possible way, and so something grander is going to come and take care of it. And I don't know, who am I to say otherwise? But I know that for me, what I can do is I can take responsibility fully for how I show up, not just in the words that I say, but in the energy that I carry into all of my interactions. Hi, babies. Hi, guys.
What else do you want people to know? Excuse me. What else do you want to leave people with? We're at an hour right now, and I'm just mindful of our children.
Yes.
I make them mine now. They're
Yes.
ours.
Yeah.
I birthed them into this world.
What I want people to know. It would be, I think, beneficial for the holistic well-being of anyone who's listening to this, to know that it is not enough to just say we're whole, mind, body, and spirit without doing the spiritual work, which is about raising your state of consciousness, which is about realizing and noticing where you're in ego. So, particularly as parents, for those who are parents, we see our children, we want to see them shine in their full light. That's at the bottom of our hearts. Every single parent, that's what you want for your kid. Ultimately, you don't care if they turn out physically totally differently than you thought they would. And if you care, that's the roar of your ego. So if you care that like, oh, I really want them to be super sporty, or I really hope they're not into hockey, or I really hope that they don't become like super emo kid or something, or I hope this and I hope that, and then you begin to like cling to that thought. That is you so being unaware of your own ego that you believe your child is an extension of your ego. Ooh, that is difficult territory, my friend.
Oh, I'm just like, when you're saying all this stuff, I'm like, yeah, guilty,
right?
So guilty. And like, not like it's wrong for being guilty, but it's like, oh, okay, what am I attaching on to my daughter? That's not for me to attach.
Right. And when and we do it even before they're born.
Oh yeah.
Right? We do it even before they're born. They're like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna raise this kid to be the kindest, most loving. I love, actually, Dr. Shefali, when I was hearing her speak one time, said it so beautifully. She was like, you know, there you are, you're rubbing your belly, and you're like, you're gonna save the world, you're gonna go with UNICEF and like, you know, change millions of lives. You're rubbing this belly and you're projecting all of this stuff onto your child. That would be an example where not only are we not aware of our ego, we are not aware of where our ego begins to push down past the boundary of somebody else's full expression. So if truly we want to see our children being fully embodied, fully themselves, shining in their bright, brilliant light, the best thing we can do is rein our own ego back and teach them what it's like to operate in this form world without attachment to our ego, right? And it can be in the little things. It can be in like, I don't know, let's say we're throwing a unicorn themed birthday party for our 3-year-old as a hypothetical example. And then we get so like, oh my gosh, 35 people are coming, 27 of which are adults. And I said I would make these like unicorn shaped cupcakes, and they're not turning out right. And we stay up till 7 a.m. because the next day we like really want to have this perfect thing going on, and for people to look at us and be like, wow, look at that mom. Oh my gosh, she must love her kids so much. Everything matches, So, not to say that themed birthday parties are not good, but if the energy that we're bringing to the preparation is not about joy and love and sharing, it's about attachment to how we look, what we sound like, how other people perceive us.
Yeah.
That's ego. And our kids learn more from what we do than what we say. So the best thing we can do to allow our child to shine in their true light is to be aware, become more and more aware of where our ego is on overdrive, and say, I'll let the awareness drive. You're not the driver here. Like, you get to stay, because I still have to operate in this time and space and dimension. I still have to, like, you know, live this life. And we have the function of a parent. You know, it is our responsibility as a parent to take care of our kids, keep them safe, keep them fed, give them guidance, show them love. And if we do that out of ego, sometimes instead of guidance, we give them our opinions. Instead of love, we give them guilt. Yeah. Instead of, openness to all possibilities, we give them this small frame of our best projected vision of what we think they can possibly accomplish, without realizing that really they are a drop from the ocean of the universe, and they are boundless. They are boundless. And if we can parent our kids from that place, we can parent ourselves from that place too. We can catch ourselves in those places of negativity and loopholes and difficulty and shittiness, and we can give ourselves the loving compassion that we need to say, oh, that's not who you are. It's okay. Yeah. Nobody really cares what this looks like. Mm-hmm. And if they do, that's their ego. Let go, let go. We release a little bit more. Mm-hmm. And then we can live from this place of freedom. So in the work that I do, and I have a course coming up in April, Parenting for Peace and Consciousness, and it's a level 1 course, and the first most important thing that I say to people around peace is that the point of this course is not that you're going to suddenly walk away and there's going to be no more fighting in your household ever, ever, ever. Because there will be a day where your 14-year-old is going to slam the door to their bedroom and say, I hate you! It will happen. It's very likely it will happen. And even if they don't yell it, they might be thinking it. So this might happen. So peace is not an experience. This is, Pema Chodron says this, and I hope I'm getting the quote correctly, but essentially peace is not about experiencing no rough. It's about experiencing all that life has to offer without getting wrapped up in it, without getting like
drawn in.
Yeah. It's like, okay, difficulties will arise, sadness will come, anger will come, not knowing will come, frustrations will come, not good enoughness will come. And instead of freaking out about it, or, what's
fight, freeze?
Yeah, like it's exactly, it's instead of going into some kind of reaction, whether it's a big outward reaction or a collapsing reaction or a disappearing reaction, instead we can respond by holding ourselves whole in that time and space, no matter what is occurring, and choose the next best step to the best of our ability. And always knowing that, as Maya Angelou says, when you know better, you do better. So if you've listened to this and you're like, oh shit, I was totally that mom that did the cupcake thing, and oh yeah, my teenage kid's already screaming and shutting the door in my face.
Or if you're going to be a parent later on down the road, if you want to be one, if you don't.
Or if you were that kid.
Yeah. Lord knows I was.
Right. Or if you just had a difficult conversation up on them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or you didn't, but you ended the conversation feeling annoyed by them. Here is an opportunity to pause. And when we do self-reflection, back to your question around like self-awareness, when we go into self-reflection from a place of non-judgmental curiosity, which is what meditation teaches us, that space of curiosity and learning and self-study is beautiful and bountiful and perfect and whole and nothing to be scared of. Sometimes we need some support, and there are plenty of books and courses and therapists and apps and coaches, and you know, we're out here, like we're here. There's people who say, you know, I need some support as I go on my way, and great, that's there. And you already have it within you to begin somewhere.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Thanks, Taraneh.
Such a joy to speak with you.
It was so nice, especially the part where you didn't know we were recording.
Yeah.
So your event is starting April 19th?
My event starts on April 9th.
Nice.
It's a 1 month course, all done via Zoom. And I did that intentionally so that people could do it from the comfort of their home. It's on West Coast time, it's in the evening, so that post bedtime, or at least like minimal supervision or, you know, babysitting required. And it's 3 90-minute sessions guided by me, plus one one-on-one session of guidance and coaching through this lens, with guided meditations and reflective questions in between, to support people who are like, yeah, this can be the next step.
Yeah. And where can people find this information?
It's all on my website, mindonspirit.com.
MINDON Spirit. So you changed from extra numbers to Mind on Spirit.
Yeah.
Why? What happened?
Yeah, I was being called to something bigger. I felt like I was still playing a bit small, and I had for a long time not felt comfortable with the word spirit or spiritual or spirituality. But actually I have a note in my iPhone from like, I don't know, 2015 or something, and I had, whenever some insight would come up for me, I would put it in a note, and the note was called Mind on Spirit. I had just decided to name it that. And so, you know, whatever, 3 and a bit years later, it's like, oh, this is what it is, because the way that I operate now in my life is I've got my mind on my spirit and my spirit on my mind. That's it. That's it. That's how it goes. So yeah, Mind on Spirit.
All right, and you can find Taraneh on Instagram as Mind on Spirit. Do you have any other ones? Is that the main one you use?
That's the main one.
Okay. Great. Yeah. And now I was like, oh, what do I say? Because for me, when we developed our friendship, people always called you TK. But I've noticed that like nowhere else is this showing up. Like, are you moving? Are you going from like, you know, Jennifer Lopez to J-Lo? Oh. So is it no longer but like reversal, like TK to Taraneh?
That's hilarious. You know, TK was a nickname that my team gave me back when I was working at Lululemon. I don't know why. No one else has ever called me that. And so, you know, and the funny thing is like, going back to this like conversation around consciousness, like, I'm not TK, I'm not even Taraneh, my name happens to be Taraneh. And to be honest, I really, as a parent, you might resonate with this in a deep way. Like when you choose a name for your child, there is like energy and effort and wisdom that goes into that, and intuition. And so Taraneh means song or love song in Farsi, and my parents at first didn't know what to name me. So I was born and they weren't really sure. I'm the third of 4 kids in my family. And I think on the morning of the 7th day, they opened, and I believe it was a Rumi book, but it may have been a Hafiz book, so a poetry book. And they said the first name that we come across is her name, and it was Taraneh. So given that I'm interested in this world of spiritual poetry that runs through my blood and bones, it feels more appropriate to call myself by the name that I truly am.
Yeah.
And Erfan, which is my maiden name, which I still use in combination with my married name King, I also intentionally choose to use as a reminder because it means mystic knowledge.
Ooh.
So I feel like I chose this family, I chose this life for a reason, and I was bestowed with these beautiful names as reminders of my truth and my possible expression, and so I keep it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess actually it's the most common soap opera name of 1986. So that's right. No, but I like to think ash like the tree, strong tree.
Yeah.
And then my last name, which I've gone back to,
Mm-hmm.
which really, because people always used to call me by my last name,
Mm-hmm.
is Beluz,
Mm-hmm.
which in Italian is short for Bella Luce, which means beautiful light.
Ah,
So the strong, beautiful light.
yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
shivers.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is funny when you're talking about my shoulders.
You are strong, beautiful light.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, God, this conversation was strong, beautiful light.
It sure was. What a joy. Thank you.
So I will link to your workshop
Mm-hmm.
and your Instagram so people can see your beautiful poetry
Thank you.
and what you're up to in the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, and for those who enjoy the yoga, I'm going to be starting to teach at One Yoga for the People starting in April. So you
Amazing.
can catch me there Monday evenings.
What type of class are you going to teach?
It's I can't remember what the class is going to be called, but it's a gentle flow with restorative at the end. Yeah.
Mondays, what time?
7:30.
Evening.
Yeah, evening.
The evening on the Mondays.
7. Yeah, 7 or 7:30. Yeah, starting in April. So I am so joyous to be joining the One Yoga family.
That's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big deal. Good for you. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Awesome. And then you get also get time for yourself in the evening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's gonna be more space like this. You know, I do all of the things I do with the same the same energy. Just this is all we have, man. It's the beauty of our connection and sharing truths.
Yeah.
So you can find me on your mat. You can find me online. I also do, like, for people who are like, yeah, you know, group things is not my thing, or I'm really in the thick of it. I am registered as a clinical counselor, and I do take clients one-on-one for people who are interested. Yeah, I say that because sometimes people have extended benefits where they can get their sessions covered, counseling sessions covered. So sometimes that's helpful.
Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah.
Come get your shoulders and or red. I feel like I totally butchered that, but you know, more reading more than just the words that are coming out of your mouth.
Come be seen as whole.
Yeah.
That which you are. That which you are.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thanks, Taraneh.
Till next time.
Ooh. Beautiful. Great. Let me save. Wonderful.
Yeah,
That was great. Did you get what you wanted out of it?
I think so.
Perfect.
Beautiful meanderings.
Yeah, I felt like the conversation flowed. We tied in stuff that's not just for parenting, you know?
Yeah.
Made it relatable for